Boychuk to center point, skates the line, switches plays to Atleti. 10 on the power play. Boychuk shovels it behind the net for Strome. Strome in the left wing corner. Carries to the half wall, above the left circle. Tavares right dot, fakes the shot, comes into the slot, shoots, they score! The Islanders win it in overtime! 3-2 is the final, and they are mobbing John Tavares in the high slot! Right wing for John Tavares, too far out in front of him, and now Tavares with pressure on Mark Stahl, calls a turnover. Okposo shoots and scores! Kyle Okposo's 100th goal in the NHL gives the Islanders their first lead of the night, 3-2 in the opening minute of period 3.
All your New York Islanders news and expert Islanders analysis, from the fourth line in Bridgeport to the first line in Long Island. This is the Dump and Chase podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Yeah, I know you suggested to split the King calls, but if you remember correctly, Andy, you sent me like 7 of them. So maybe there's another one coming at the end of the disclaimer that isn't one of the 2 in the intro.
No comment.
How's that? I know we have the chat room going now on the Dump and Chase live page, but I really wish that people could see the behind-the-scenes chat that goes on between the 3 of us while we're doing the show, because I think sometimes that's more entertaining than the show we actually do. Especially when that Andy guy's on, because then the show's just not entertaining. But anyway, this is episode 41 of the Dump and Chase podcast. That's right. I think it's technically 42, but because of my inability to edit and post things, this is technically 41. I'm Shane Blackburn. You can follow me on Twitter at DumpandChase80. Since I don't use my personal one anymore, we're just going to use the Dump and Chase one, so that's DumpandChase80. Alongside me today, as always, Andy Graziano. You can follow him at Tasman19, and Rich Diaz Rodriguez, who is at RDNHL. And today, for the first 15 minutes or so, we have a very special guest from Islanders Insight, and it is Eric Borden, who I believe is at EJ on everything, although I very rarely see him tweet.
He's a Facebook guy.
He's a Facebook guy, so make sure you check him out on Facebook.
Yes, indeed. He is very heavy on Facebook.
So
He has many friends and leather-bound books, and his apartment smells of mahogany.
It is great to have you on with us today, Eric. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We're gonna talk some Islanders. We're gonna talk some All-Star game, because surprisingly this year it's involving Islanders, and it's also involving hideous jerseys and apparently dumb ideas too.
The NHL, bad ideas, never.
All right, let's start really quick though, guys. Let's start with the past 3 games for the New York Islanders. Lose 2 in a row, come back and win the next 3. These are not the Islanders of the past. I know we've said that in previous episodes, but I think they show it more and more every time that they come out and play that these are not the Islanders of the past. And in the past, you lose those 2 in a row. There's no way that they come out here and beat the Devils in overtime the way they did, and then after that just destroy Columbus, and then for 40 minutes absolutely dominate the Rangers. Because the first 20, I would say, was heavily Ranger-sided, and then the next 40 were just dominated by the Islanders. But that Devil game, it did something for me that we were talking about John Tavares and about how he has to take over games and be a leader on the team and be the Tavares we expect him to be. And this is 100% what he did in that Devil game with 3 points, 2 goals and an assist, and a 3-2 win. Did anybody see anything in that? I mean, I didn't see the entirety of that game, so I can't speak for the entire 60 minutes, but anybody who watched that game, did you guys see something in Tavares that made you realize he had taken that step to be a true leader?
Eric, why don't you kick it off since you're the guest? Go ahead.
All right. Well, I looked at him, and especially when he scored that goal to tie the game. I think after that, even before that, I think he just decided that was it. He was going to change things because the team was playing lackluster hockey. The Devils could bore you to death with their game. They've done that for 20 years. And it's just like he just decided, all right, this is it. We're not losing to this team. And, he just proved that firing the puck at the net, good things happen. And when the puck went in at a weird angle, when he just kind of shot it and it went off the goalie and in the net, it was. I think that was then he just decided, right, we're not going to lose this game, and he kind of took over from there. And he was all over the ice. And you see that the one thing I see a lot about from this team is that it reminds me a lot of like the '96 Yankees, where there's like a different hero every night, and there don't have to be a bunch of superstars. There's a couple of guys who you can count on, and then the other guys just seem to make their name. And early in the season we saw that, and everybody was wondering, hey, what's wrong with Tavares? Why isn't he taking the lead? Why isn't he scoring every night? What's going on? Meanwhile, he now has more goals this year than he did at this point last year. So, he decides that he has to step it up. I think he was frustrated too. He wanted to be a bigger part of this offense. As much as he'll say it's a team game and, he's just there for the team and whatever he has to do, he'll do. He wants to be the leader of this team. That's his job as the captain. I think that something clicked in him when he scored that second goal to tie the game, that he just said, hey, this isn't happening, and whatever I have to do to make this team win, that's what I'll do. And I think that we're going to see that from him more often from this point out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that, Eric, and everything you've just said. I think the overtime win goal, that basically, for me, is the most fierce I've seen him this season. It was a clean pocket pick, if you guys remember, and he all he had on his mind was, I'm going to end this game now. I'm going to go behind the net, I'm going to take this puck, and I'm going to put it in the net, and I'm going to go home. And I think that's right, Eric. I think he's playing with more confidence than he ever has, and I think he's playing like a captain should play. You've always said this in the email chains, and you've always said this when we've spoken, is that Tavares is, he's there. In one way or another, he's always there. Even if he has a lackluster game, he's a presence, and I think that people are expecting a little bit too much from him, I guess, because he is the captain. But I don't think he's disappointed. Has he disappointed you guys this season at all? Maybe a couple of bad penalties here and there, but overall, he's playing at. That's probably it, right? If there was one thing I could take away from his game, would be those stupid penalties, like the spearing penalty from a couple of weeks ago. And, when the Islanders were tied up, I believe. And that was poor, but he had a regression day, if you will. But as far as Tavares is concerned, I think that's definitely. I have nothing but I'm very happy with what he's done with his career so far this season.
Yeah, I think when he took that penalty, that was like kind of the culmination of his frustration. I think he got to the point where he was. He's kind of like the star player on a basketball team or a football game. When people are wide receivers double covered, and I think he felt like, how am I going to play my game when they're always coming after me? And the superstars in this league will find a way, and that's what he had to do. Sometimes you have to make adjustments, and that's what he's had to do. In the beginning of the season, yeah, it kind of felt like, where is he? Why isn't he among the league leaders in scoring? You kind of felt like, this is the guy that we count on to put the puck in the net.
Right.
And it's great that you have people like Franz Nielsen and Kyle Oposo and Brock Nelson putting the puck in the net. But you want to see this guy score. And I think when he took that spearing penalty, which was clear retaliation, I think he realized after that has to stop.
Yeah.
I was saying to people right then and there that he's the captain of this team, and if he's going to be able to line up his troops and say, hey, this is what we have to do, then he has to stop taking dumb penalties. You can't expect people to follow your lead when you're the captain and you're taking stupid minors like that. And it could have been a whole lot worse too. I mean, if he would have taken a 4-minute penalty or a 5-minute penalty, it could have been a whole lot worse. He could have been suspended.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. What do you think, Shane? What's on? How do you view it all?
Do I have to answer this question?
Absolutely.
I don't know. Tavares was disappointing in the beginning of the season, and not. I mean, he's still almost at a point per game pace. I wouldn't say that. I don't know. I don't want to call it disappointed, but I guess there is no other word for it. I think I just expected to see the Tavares who put this team on his back more than once in the past come out and do it every night. He doesn't have to, obviously, anymore because he hasn't done it that often this season, and they're still, 29 and 13?
Yeah.
So I mean, he hasn't had to do it. What interests me is if Nielsen and Nelson and Lee and Kuhlman and all these players weren't holding up to their end of the bargain, would we see the Tavares we're used to? Would we see the Tavares out there carrying a sub 500 team as he did in the past? Or would we still see the Tavares we're seeing right now, who has been very good, just not the just not the standout player that we're used to seeing on a bad team?
You know, that's a very good point, Shane. We kind of mentioned this, if you remember, a few podcasts ago when I mentioned that maybe it's not that Matt Martin, as an example here, is a poor player or a talentless, player, if we will. It's just that maybe his game is at a certain level, and the Islanders have progressed, leaving him behind, making Matt Martin aware of the fact that he must progress along with his team. He has to change or amplify his game. And I think that that's what happened with Tavares at the beginning. It was somewhat of a culture shock, maybe for JT to notice that, okay, the dynamic has changed because we have more dynamic players. We have players that can do things that they're experts at, like Kuhlman with the back checking. And now you have Nielsen, who has stepped up his game. No one's really talking about that. The fact that I believe he has evolved into an absolute superstar that he's completely working under the radar, which is fine by me. I believe that Franz Nielsen is the most underrated hockey player in the NHL. I think any team that has a GM with eyes would want to have a Franz Nielsen on their team. Okay? So this is what I'm saying. This team has evolved in such a way that it's almost strange for most of us to see the way it's all rolled out, and JT included. Like, where does it all fit in? And I think he's now found his niche, and I think he's going to, man, if he gets hot, forget it. Look out, NHL, because that's why we're atop, if you will, as of right now, the Eastern Conference, and most importantly, the Metro. So, I don't know.
Well, I mean, he has 39 points in, someone do the math for me, what did we play, 43 games? So he's got 39 points in 43 games. So he's still almost at a point per game pace. So he's by no means not been good. I just don't think he's been the Tavares we were expecting. So if he does turn it on the way we all know he can and probably is going to, that you're right, Rich. It's a dangerous situation for the rest of the league.
But in his defense, don't you think that he doesn't really have to be the John Tavares that we thought he was going to be? Like last year or the year before, he kind of had to be because they didn't have that secondary scoring. They didn't have Anders Lee coming through in the clutch like he has. They didn't have the scoring a couple of years ago from Brock Nelson. These guys who they got in the draft over years have finally started to come through and finally started to mature. And I think that's a big part of it, too. And I think that goes back to organizational depth as well. It's like they have to make sure that, okay, you got these guys now that are helping because you drafted well and, they came along, but you have to make sure that you're taking care of them and whatever they need. Whatever the Nino situation is in the past, and, the team did whatever they had to do to rectify that situation. You just don't know what would have happened if maybe his needs were more attended to at the time. You got to think about these kids. They're 18, 19, 20 years old, and they're, you're talking about culture shock, and it's just, that's it. Like, Tavares kind of had the same thing, except he's more of a born leader. He comes in there, he knows that this is his job to lead, and whatever form that has to take, that's what he's taking. And I don't think he necessarily has to be that player, but I like to see the younger players look up to him, and also make sure the organization takes care of these younger players so they don't fall by the wayside. And, we don't have any guys who won out despite, being at the top of the standings right now. There's always going to be somebody who's unhappy. You always have to, too many egos in one place. So it's all about walking that fine line. And I think that's what Tavares does. That's good. He's kind of soft-spoken, so he's not going to be that demonstrative captain where he's going to be screaming and yelling in the locker room. But I think that's why guys kind of respect him more. So I think that maybe he doesn't have to be that, guy who scores 3 points every night and, has 60 goals at the end of the season, but he's also more respected around the league because of that. And that's why, like I was saying before about the penalties, if he's going to garner more respect around the league, he's got to cut out the silly penalties. And, sometimes that he's still a kid.
Yeah.
He's just in his early 20s. And, it's just, you forget because the guy's been here for 5 years, so you kind of forget how young he is.
Yeah. John Tavares, his mark is clearly being left in that room. I said it about a month ago when they had lost to St. Louis. I had written a column on Islanders Insight about how the mood in that room hasn't changed this year, whether they've won or lost. Mm-hmm. They've been very even-keeled. They've been very logical and reasonable about what the expectations are and where they want to get to. And I saw that again at the Garden on the heels of the 3-0 win when I went in that room. There wasn't a lot of jocularity. There wasn't a lot of hoopla going on, loud music playing. There wasn't any of that. And when I sat down and talked to John, he's just so calm, so mature for his age, and I think that's rubbing off on the rest of his teammates. I think that's the biggest leap to me that this team has taken, has been off the ice. The additions of Johnny Boychuk and Nick Leddy and their Stanley Cup experience obviously speaks volumes and goes a long way in that room, but the maturity of Tavares and the way he carries himself game in and game out, to me, is what's really changed in terms of the team and that locker room this year. In terms of on the ice, look, with the offensive depth that they now have, with the game-by-game improvement in Ryan Strome and Brock Nelson and Anders Lee and that fourth line getting back to playing the way they played 2 years ago, Tavares doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all. The Islanders are not a team now that you can beat shutting down their first line. And I think John is finally settling into that role, kind of settling into that philosophy that he doesn't have to do it all. Eric makes a good point, too, in that Tavares is not a Mark Messier-type leader. If you look at that Rangers team in '94 that won the Cup, were they the most talented? Absolutely not. But they had a captain that just would not let them lose. That's the bottom line, guys. They had a captain that would not let them lose. And Tavares is actually the opposite of that. But for him, it's follow my example. Don't listen to what I say, just do what I do. And I think that's been the biggest change for me, is internally in that room this year, what I've seen.
I think that's why people sometimes worry about Capuano, because they're looking for somebody to take that lead, that Messier type lead, because Tavares doesn't have that screaming, yelling personality. They're looking for like a Mike Keenan type of coach that will absolutely take over. But you can't do that because of the way these guys are used to dealing with their coach, or dealing with with Tavares. That's not what they need. Doug Weight is very much like that. Like, you see him on the bench, and he gets red in the face and he wants to throw sticks on the ice and he gets angry. And, that comes from, playing in the league for so long and having that experience. But, I think that it's a good mix. Do I think Capuano is the greatest coach ever? Maybe not. But, I think having a guy, like you said, like Tavares, who can change the culture of the organization and can go in there and, like you said, do what you do what I do, not what I say, maybe the combination of the two of them is what works. And I know people are going to be all over that, and like, oh, well, Capuano isn't the right coach for this team. Regardless, if they didn't fire him last year when they lost however many games in a row in November, then forget it. They're not going to fire him now, especially if they're first in the conference. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. So that's whatever it is. It is what it is. So, they're going to have to rely on a combination of the both of them. Right. If Capuano is going to have to get a little more fiery because Tavares doesn't, I could see him and Weight doing that. But, let them do that. Let Tavares be who he is.
Right. Jack Capuano is in. I'm sorry, Rich. I'll just be a second. I apologize. Jack Capuano is in an absolute no-win situation with the fan base.
Just took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah.
If the Islanders win, the players get credit. If the Islanders lose, Capuano gets blamed.
Right.
The only way Capuano wins this season is if he wins the Stanley Cup.
And even then, he won't get any credit.
Well, no, I think then you're looking at a guy who, halfway through the season, is a realistic Jack Adams nominee. Realistic. I'm not even saying that. That's just fact. You know, whether you like him or hate him, that's just plain old fact.
What I don't think
Laviolette for me are the front runners right now for the Jack Adams award.
What I don't think people realize, guys, is Capuano is just like we're watching a group of 20-some-odd young players grow. We're watching a young coach grow.
Exactly. I've always said that.
He hasn't been in the league very long.
Rich has been consistent with that message.
Yeah, he's. I think we're definitely watching Capuano grow, same as we're watching the team and the young players like the Stroms and the Nelsons grow. It's the same process we're watching the players go through that we're watching Capuano go through, and I think he learns more and more each year. I think he improves as a head coach more and more each year. Obviously, I and most of the fan base haven't seen a practice that he runs or how he is behind the scenes. All we really get are his post-game interviews and how he reacts during the game and what we see behind the bench. But I think we're watching him grow the same as we're watching the team grow. And the patience that you have to have with the team is the same patience you have to have with Capuano. And like Eric said, do I think he is Al Arbor? No. But do I think that he should be coaching like Mites somewhere in Wisconsin? No. I think he is a very good coach for this team. Now the question I pose, and I'm going to pose this to the three of you, and I know we're going to let Eric get out here in a couple of seconds, but I want to pose this question to the three of you. Capuano was definitely the coach for this team as they developed into what they are now. Mm-hmm. Is he the coach for this team to take them to the next level, or do they need to make a change at the helm to take the next step?
All right, Rich, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's a good question, Shane. I believe that if Capuano would have had the season he had last season by this time, I'd say you'd definitely fire him. But I think that I wanted to see what Capuano would do with the right pieces in place. He needed a goaltender. He's got one. And he needed some defensemen. He got them. And he's got them at the top of their game, at the top of the list, at the top of the division. So that proves to me that Capuano knows what he's doing. Now, the question always is, if Capuano can only take them past the first round, who's the coach out there that can turn the corner for them? The only coach that's out there is Blisma, right? Because he has the Stanley Cup experience. I honestly believe that a coach like Blisma was a bit spoiled with the talent base that he had in Pittsburgh. I think you have more of a blue-collar feel here in New York. I don't think that a guy who has had all of the opportunities he had in Pittsburgh could do well here. I think the culture is so entrenched in this blue-collar attitude, and this let's take it day-by-day attitude. Let's not depend on Sidney Crosby attitude. Let's depend on our fourth line instead of our first line. I just don't see this culture changing anytime soon, Shane. I think that even if they get out of the first round, Capuano comes back because he has done something very special. It hasn't been done in a very long time.
Here's the thing with Capuano. People like to say, "Oh, how does he run his look?" I've been to practices. I've been to training camps. I've been to pregame skates. It's funny when you look at the Islanders practice / pregame skate, and then I was focusing very intently for reasons that I won't discuss on this show. The Blackhawks, for instance, when they came into town, I spent a lot of time focusing on their skate because it was pretty much a full skate. They had the whole team out there. It wasn't just like an optional morning skate. It was a full team skate. And what I saw Joel Quenneville working on with his team was no different than what I saw Jack Capuano working on with his team. So, the talk about what Capuano does in practice to me is irrelevant. It's all about wins or losses. The Islanders have always been a franchise that has craved consistency. They don't like to be one of these teams that runs coaches in and out every 2 to 3 years. Is Capuano the guy that I think this year is going to be a telling year? The Islanders are more than likely definitely heading to the playoffs. Sport Club Stats, whether you believe in that kind of statistical analytics and stuff like that, has them at 98.6% chance of making the playoffs as of today. It would take an epic collapse for them not to, no matter what the seed is. And we've seen seeds not matter as much as people think they matter when they drop the puck in April. But, that's when things get turned up. We can look at the Islanders all we want right now and praise them for their record and praise them for where they are in the standings and this and that. It's all going to matter come April. Teams that generally may not come to play today are going to come to play come April. and the game changes so radically in the National Hockey League from the regular season to the playoffs that to me is the biggest question around this team is, are they going to be able to lift their game on a whim like that in April and kind of meet that intensity that the NHL playoffs have become?
Andy, let me ask you this question then, and I'm sorry to barge in, but so the Islanders get in and they get eliminated the first round. They fire Capuano or they keep him?
I'm sorry, Rich. Say that. I was reading, so I apologize.
No. Basically, I mentioned Bilesma. Is it Bilesma,
Yep.
guys? I keep messing up.
Dan, yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't. Well, the point is,
Dan.
So, like, Dan.
He's not our coach.
DVD. Okay, so basically, my question was, well, if the Islanders get, if they make it to the playoffs and get kicked out the first round again, is that the sign that says, okay, so here Capuano can't turn the corner with a talented team like this? We need a coach that has the experience of this. There's, Bilesma right there was waiting for his opportunity to come back to the island.
I think that's an interesting question, Rich, and that's a tough question. Bilesma did well with the Penguins, but coaches, to me, I've said this before, they're like items on a supermarket shelf, right? They have expiration dates. Even the great ones had expiration dates.
Mm-hmm.
People forget that Al Arbor went through some pretty lean years after he won those 4 cups. Who knows what that expiration date is on Capuano. But as I said before, this is an organization that doesn't like to make changes just for the sake of making changes. And I think that with Snow taking the full brunt of the responsibility for last year's failures, I do think more of this year is on Capuano's shoulders. But I think if the Islanders win a playoff round, he for sure sticks around. There's no way they let him go.
Exactly. Gentlemen?
You know what, Andy? I have a question for you.
Sure.
In that you're talking about, getting in, sometimes the seeds don't matter. Playing on that point, what do you think, in your opinion? Say, like, okay, they get in, they are the 1 seed. In my opinion, they are looked at as just still the Islanders. They're still not given that respect. They could go, I don't know, say 52, 13-3, or whatever the hell it is, or 7, or whatever that works out. And they could get the number 1 seed,
yep.
and they still wouldn't be looked at the same as if they were the Rangers and the Rangers got the 1st seed. Like, I'd still think they would have that underdog label to them, even though.
Absolutely. They would definitely still be the underdog, Eric, even if they make that 1st seed. I agree 100%.
But that's fine to them. That doesn't see that's what I spoke to Tavares about the other night too. I said to John, I said, is this team still playing statement games? This was in my column that I posted yesterday on Insight. Are the Islanders still playing statement games at this point, or have you guys proved everything you need to prove and it's just all internal at this point? And he looked at me and he said, look, we don't care what anybody else thinks. We're playing for ourselves. We know where we want to get to. We know what where we need to get to, and that's really all we're focused on. I don't think the Islanders care. I think the mainstream media is starting to come around now. To be honest, a team that suffered the follies, if I could say that in a kind way, that this franchise has suffered through, it makes them easy targets, and it's sort of like a credit rating. Once you damage it, it's not that easy to rebuild it. It takes time, and winning certainly helps that, which is why we're seeing that shift right here around the All-Star break with the Islanders appearing much more in the mainstream media. You know what? Let us go in as underdogs. That's perfectly fine with me, and I think that'd be perfectly fine with the players and Capuano. I don't think they mind being in that position at all.
And a real underdog this time, not a makeshift one for the purposes of drama. It's overblown. The Rangers were called underdogs, and that really ticked me off last year, guys. I don't know if you remember that against the Kings. They were not underdogs. You're not an underdog when you have the best goalie in the freaking world between the pipes. I'm sorry, you're not an underdog. You're not. Marty St. Louis is on your team, you're not an underdog. Islanders make it to the playoffs, top seed, low seed, middle seed, they are the underdogs. That's it. I don't care who they play. They're the underdogs. They would have played the Devils, they'd be underdogs.
All right, Eric, one more before we let you get out of here, Eric. Who wins the Stanley Cup?
Right on the spot.
I love putting people on the spot.
Boom. I know who Eric wants to say. I know Eric well. I know who he wants
to the Islanders. I just don't know.
Just don't say the Rangers.
Maybe I'll go out on a limb and say that Nashville will win the cup because
Wow.
they've been playing so well recently, and they've been so steadily succeeding, and they'll have to deal with that Pecorine for a couple of weeks, but they'll survive, I'm sure. And maybe that's just what they need. That they have a star goaltender, and he'll get a rest for a month, and after they'll be back sometime after the All-Star break, and then they'll continue their winning ways. And I think that they'll be forced to be reckoned with. I mean, you can never count out the Kings either, because you can see what what it is that they've been doing. They don't ever quit, and even when they seem like, hey, they'll barely squeak into the playoffs, they wind up coming home with the cup. So I mean, it's such a crazy game. I mean, you really don't know. But you know what? That's why we watch the games, and that's why I continue to hope for the Islanders as I have every day of my entire life. So you never know. I mean, I was lucky enough to be old enough to see them win the Stanley Cup 4 times, but I was too young to really care. And not that I ever wanted to be older than I am, but when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, it's not the same as when you're 38 years old and you can really appreciate it.
Yep.
But it's different, and especially the fact that I don't live on Long Island anymore, and it's weird having to watch the games and not really be a part of that community where you can pick up, go to a game and be there, and that can start a whole other conversation. But just in general, it's just I live in South Florida, and nobody cares about the Florida Panthers. Nobody says a word about this team, and you know what? They're actually not a bad team. They're actually playing pretty well, and I wish more people would talk about them because they're actually in a pretty decent position to make the playoffs. And you never know if the Islanders do face them. It would not be a bad idea for me if they did face them. I would be able to go to at least a few games. That'd be fantastic. But you just never know. Like nobody saw the Islanders doing this well, but nobody saw the Panthers doing this well either. Especially early in the season when all you saw are, and it's familiar to us, are articles about how there's no fans and nobody's coming to games, and what are they gonna do? Are they gonna move the franchise? I mean, it's just like it's kind of like looking in the mirror. Like, really, I've seen this movie before, and it's just I hope it ends better for them than it did for us. But it could be worse. But still, I think the three of you know my feelings on that. But especially Andy and Rich. But no, I think it's difficult to say at this point. I mean, we're not even at the All-Star break yet. But I think that anybody from the West has I think a better chance than anybody from the East. Though I'll always hold out hope that the Islanders surprise everybody and bring the cup back home to Long Island. You never know. So fingers crossed.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on with us today, Eric. We'll have to have you on again soon. I think we're going to do an Islanders Insight member for the first part of the show for the next couple of weeks. So hopefully we'll get back to Eric after we get through the rest of the guys over there at IslandersInsight.com. Again, make sure he's not a huge tweeter, so make sure you check out Eric Borden on Facebook. I know him and Andy split duties on the Islanders Insight Facebook page. So make sure you check him out. Make sure you check out everything he writes on IslandersInsight.com. That's Eric Borden. Thanks a lot, Eric.
Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah,
Thanks,
take
Eric.
care,
Have a
Eric.
great night.
Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Bilesma.
All right, hang on.
How now, brown cow?
The Dump and Chase podcast is in no way affiliated with the New York Islanders, Bridgeport Sound Tigers, or the National Hockey League. The views expressed by the host, panel, and guests are their own.
Letty moves it up the wall. Oposo, or rather Nelson, trying to sweep it out. He got it out to center, and Dallas has to chase it back to their own blue line. They turn it over. Franz Nielsen shooting for it. He scores! Franz Nielsen has the hat trick, and they'll ice it for the Islanders as they have a 7-5 lead, and the Hats are hitting the ice here at the Coliseum.
All All right, well, a big thank you to Eric Borden from IslandersInsight.com for coming on with us and spending a couple minutes with us here on the Dump and Chase podcast. This is the 41st episode of the Dump and Chase podcast. Again, I think it's like really the 42nd live one, but it's the 41st. I've been following the chat room that we have going on over at the dumpandchasepodcast.com/live, and I've been reading through everything. And there's one thing I want to mention. I would beg on my knees to bring Jaromir Jagr over at the trade deadline for the playoffs.
Happen.
No, never.
I don't doubt that.
I wouldn't mind it either, but it's not going to happen.
And apparently Chris Kreider's going to get suspended for something.
Yeah,
So
I'm just getting some messages on that now.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find it.
I can't
It was
wait
a
to
boarding
watch.
penalty. If anything, you want to look for. Hold on, let me find her on Twitter. She's an absolutely great fan.
At my regular face.
Yeah, she's awesome. I mean, she literally, and especially because it's the Bruins, she definitely probably made a gif of it already. She's fantastic.
Definitely, probably.
She's a fantastic follow, by the way.
Whenever I'm on the bus and I can't watch like the first period, I just make sure I keep track of her Twitter to see all of our goals and stuff.
And let me just put this out there for those that maybe don't follow me on Twitter at Tasman19. I don't know if people are going to like this, hate it. I guess you're going to have your own opinion on it, but there is word coming from the NHL, from our sources at Insight, that they're going to be experimenting with a new version of the glow puck for TV production broadcasts.
Ring around the puck.
Could possibly see something at the All-Star game. They're also working on a shot radar for every shot and glowing puck trail on replays. So, like it or hate it, that's what the NHL is thinking about doing. They sent out a couple of prototypes today, and they might start experimenting with it at the All-Star game. So, strap yourselves in.
Ring around the puck, guys. That's the word.
I'm not excited about this. I was gonna get more into it, but Barry over in the chat asks a good question. So let's dig right into that, guys, as it brings us right back into the Islander talk. He asks, "What is the number one thing that the Isles need to do to keep winning?" I don't think there is one thing. If I had to put them on a priority list, the top thing on that priority list would be that Yaroslav Halak needs to stay on the pace he's on right now.
Yeah, I also think aside from the obvious, which is secondary scoring and better gap control from a defenseman, especially the let's say the third pair of D-men, I think Chad Johnson needs to win. I think that would only bolster confidence and make the Islanders believe that they're pretty much unstoppable on any night with whomever it is that's between the pipes.
He did a pretty good job in Columbus.
Yes, he did. He did a very good job.
God, I'm sorry, but Kreider should be gone for at least 5.
No, you know what? I'm looking at this now. I don't see it, Shane.
But he has that reputation.
He gives him a shove in the lower back, right at the goal line. I don't know.
He has that reputation to do stuff like this on purpose, though, throughout the league. So that might factor into it.
See that to me, I'm sorry. I'm watching the GIF loop over and over again.
Where's the GIF loop? Hold on, where is it?
I just tweeted it. I just retweeted her.
It's pretty ugly, though.
No, that to me is a minor for boarding. That to me is not a major.
They don't call that anymore. They don't call that anymore. Anything they call boarding is now automatically looked at. They don't call boarding anymore.
No, that's not bad. No, I'm sorry.
That's a minor for boarding. That's not an intent to injure. No way.
No way.
Maybe I just let the fact that I hate Kreider get in the way there.
No, I don't think that's an intent to injure. I don't think that to me is
no.
He
didn't
something.
Even push. He didn't push him that hard. No.
I don't know.
But let me go. Hold on.
Let's get back to the Islanders here.
Yeah,
guys.
but hold on. To finish my point. You mentioned that CJ did very well against the Jackets. Yes, but he only faced
Peter Puck.
Right, he only faced under 25 shots. He wasn't really tested that day.
Backup goalie. Chad Johnson's on a 2-year deal at $1.5 million per season. There's no way they're dumping Chad Johnson at this point. They're gonna hope he finds his game. He's maybe looking at, what do we got, 40 games left? Less, right? 39.
39, 38.
Johnson right now has played under 10, I believe, right? I don't have the stats in front of me. How many games has Chad Johnson played this year? All right, let's just say 10 for argument's sake. I don't think it's any more than that anyway. He's only looking at getting maybe 12 more starts
If
in the
that.
final 39 games. They're not going to go out and get themselves a backup goalie just for 12 starts. They're going to hope that Johnson finds his game. They're going to play him strategically in matchups. You'll see him this weekend with the back-to-back tomorrow against Pittsburgh and then Saturday in Montreal. You'll probably see him in Montreal, is my assumption.
That's about right, yeah.
So yeah, the backup goalie I think is out of the equation. Thoughts on Lubo, Prudence, just real quick. Back spasms flared up again on Lubo. He skated today with Mikhail Grabovski prior to practice. Did not take part in the team practice. It's something that I think they're being extra cautious with Lubo. I think if this was the playoffs, he'd be playing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that with we'll go back to the depth, which Garth Snow has really done a great job building this year. They can afford themselves the opportunity to give guys more rest. I think that's what happened when you saw the one-game absence of Josh Bailey and Cal Clutterbuck last week. I think that Capuano knew they were banged up, maybe went to them and said, hey, could you use a night off? We have Grabs coming back. And with depth, you're able to do that. And I think that's going to benefit the Islanders greatly in April in terms of being a very healthy team heading into the playoffs.
Well, I guess my point of bringing up CJ, and we can change gears here, is just that I think that's the one last piece of the puzzle. I mean, you have all your pieces in place. I don't see any blockbuster moves happening between now and the end of the season. So
I don't think there's a reason for them either.
Exactly. What would make me feel secure, is that Chad Johnson actually played and played above 500 hockey for the rest of the season, and would give the Islanders that much more confidence, knowing that whomever you put there will help you win and steal a game when you need it. And that's the only thing I think is missing from the Islanders' repertoire right now. It's that one last piece, which is that.
Well, I'm glad Barry brings up this point because I don't want to talk about Chad Johnson anymore. So I'm glad Barry brings up this question. What do they do with Grabovski when he comes back? Sound familiar? Yes, it absolutely sounds familiar. It sounds like Bailey. It sounds like Grabner. It sounds more like Grabner because it's Grabner and Grabovski, Michael and Mikhail. I don't know if you get more similar than that situation. I think he goes back to the first line. I think Bailey has been very good there. I think Bailey doesn't get a fair shot from a lot of the fan base of the Islanders, but I think Bailey has been very good there. But I was very excited to see what Grabovski was going to do at that line before he went down.
I agree with you, Shane. He did. Let's try it. Let's see if he awakens.
Andy, what do you think?
I personally, it was too early to tell for me from when I saw that line at the Rock. Unfortunately, it wasn't even for a full period because Grabovski got hurt blocking a shot in the first period and then left in the second when he tried to come back out. I didn't like what I saw, but again, there wasn't much of a sample size there for me to make an accurate opinion on it, to draw an accurate opinion on it. So you may want to try it. I don't know. I personally still think Anders Lee is the perfect fit for that line. When you look back on the success that John Tavares and Kyle Oposo had with Matt Molson, I was saying this the other night at the Garden. To me, Anders Lee is Matt Molson 10 years ago in terms of the way he plays, scoring the dirty goals, planting himself in front of the net. We saw the goal he scored the other night on Henrik Lundqvist. What?
With more natural talent.
I don't know about natural talent. I think it's similar talent. We saw the goal he scored the other night against Henrik Lundqvist to open up the scoring at Madison Square Garden. That was a Matt Molson goal.
Absolutely a Matt Molson goal.
So why not put, in my opinion, Anders Lee is the absolute, unequivocal, perfect fit for that first line. Why they haven't tried it? I just don't think
they're going to do it.
I have no answer as to why they haven't tried it yet.
I have one that I keep going back to when people ask that question. And that is Strome and Lee are so good together they don't want to split them up.
I don't know. Strome is good with anyone.
But I think that
Strome's good with Matt Martin, for crying out loud.
But yeah. I think the two of them together gives the Islanders the second line that they need to keep the pressure off of the first line. And I think they're afraid if they put Lee on that first line, it's putting all their eggs in one basket.
Whatever you say, Shane.
And thank you, Scott, for agreeing with me that Lee is more talented than Matt Martin, than Matt Molson.
No,
but I really think they're afraid to put Lee on that first line because of that situation. Yes, Strome will be good with anybody, But I think they're so good right now together, and the chemistry is so high between Lee and Strome that they don't want to break that up.
All right, let me ask you this. Shane and Scott, who seems to be chiming in an awful lot this evening. Jesus, I don't know why we gave this guy the link. Do you think that Matt Molson is a burner? I mean, look, I'm not going to say good skater because that's ridiculous. Every guy who plays in the National Hockey League is a good skater. Obviously.
But we can say
just answer the question. Dude, just
Okay.
answer the question. Is Matt Molson a good skater?
Compared to me, sure.
Is he a fast skater? Let me say that.
Not compared to the rest of the NHL.
Okay, is Anders Lee a fast skater?
Yep.
I think he's
No,
faster
what?
than Matt Molson
Yeah.
is.
Faster than Matt Molson.
Marginally. Okay, is Matt Molson a kind of a dirty, gritty, get in front of the net, score dirty goals type of player?
Don't go here. Don't
Is he?
go here
Yes or no?
because Lee is a 10 times grittier player than Molson. If you throw the puck in the corner and you throw Matt Molson and Anders
You're
Lee,
trying to look at the Matt Molson of today on the Buffalo Sabres, and the reason the Islanders got rid of Matt Molson.
I'm looking at the Molson I'm used to, even from the Islanders. If you throw the puck in the corner and you send Matt Molson from
You're ridiculous.
5 years ago and Anders Lee from right now, Lee is coming out with it.
You're ridiculous. And Matt Molson at that point would have also.
I don't know about that. I even right now, I have more faith that Lee's coming out of the corner with the puck or keeping the puck than I did with Molson then. I think Molson.
We do remember that this guy scored 30, 31, and 36 goals in 3 consecutive seasons, right? We do remember that.
Michael Grabner scored 30 goals too, and none of us are very high on Michael Grabner.
I just said 30, 31, and 36 in 3 consecutive seasons. Do we think that now we're saying if we're saying Anders Lee is better than Matt
Anders
Molson
Lee
from that time, then you're saying that you think Anders Lee can score 40 to 45 goals?
I think if Anders Lee plays 82 games on the wing with John Tavares, he will be over 35 almost every year.
All right.
I honestly believe that.
All right.
Because I think Matt Molson is a great hockey player, and I loved Matt Molson. I think he was a very big product of John Tavares.
Okay.
I don't think he comes near those numbers if he wasn't playing 82 games alongside John Tavares.
But he was.
But all 3 of those years, didn't he play with Tavares on his line?
And he did the next year when he scored 15 and 47, and then he did the next year when he scored 6 goals in 11 games before being traded to Buffalo.
But that's what I'm saying. I think he was a very big product. I agree he was a very, very good player. I think he was a big product of John Tavares, and I think if you give Lee the same situation you gave Molson, I think Lee would have had better numbers. If not dead even, better. I don't think I honestly believe Lee's going to turn out to be a better hockey player than Matt Molson.
I agree he's a better fit for the team right now, as Barry said. That makes perfect sense, and I love him too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing Anders Lee here. So let's not take this out of context.
No, I know you're not. I'm just saying I think he's better than Molson.
I'm just saying that in my opinion, Anders Lee is, if Matt Molson could get 10 years back on his career,
I think he
would compare to me very favorable.
I don't know about favorable. I think they would be neck and neck. I wouldn't put the favorable tag on Molson. But I wouldn't put the favorable tag on Molson. I would put the favorable tag on Lee.
Okay. That's fine.
But I honestly think a big reason why they don't want to put Lee on that first line is they don't want to take him away from Strome.
Okay.
Rich, I know me and Andy just went at it for a little bit.
I have no dog in this fight. We're good.
Elwood, Matt Molson to me was a great Islander. He was a team player. He was beloved in the locker room for a reason. And again, you can't discount those offensive stats with or without Tavares. He put up big time numbers that we haven't seen from an Islanders winger in an awfully long time.
Barry has a good point too. That I think Lee is less of a liability defensively.
I think, but again, I don't know what you're. I still think you're confused and thinking that I'm talking about Matt Molson of today, or even the Matt Molson that the Islanders traded. We all know that's the reason the Islanders traded him, is because they felt that he was getting to the point in his career where he was getting too slow for the increased speed of the game. And I saw it. I was telling Rich about it. I saw him the first 3 games of that season from the press box, and I said to Rich, I said, he's too slow.
Too slow.
So
He's gotten too slow.
So let me ask
and that
you.
happened literally. That literally for me happened overnight, like over the summer.
Over the summer, exactly. He gained some weight or something, and he just
cement.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Andy. Do you go Okposo? Sorry, Eric. Do you go Okposo, Tavares, and Lee? Is that
Scott,
what your line is?
Hold on. Let me just say to Scott. Scott returns now, which is clever. You don't want me to answer that question. You know what? I'll answer you offline, Scott. I don't dislike.
Is this Scott?
And I think I know why he's asking. I think I know who he's jabbing at when he asks that question. But we'll talk about that offline.
But I think. So I think 21, 91, and 27 is a waste of a line because I think 21 and 27
a waste of a line?
Yeah, because I think 21 and 27 bring you the same skill set to the line.
Really? When's the last time you saw Kyle Okposo in front of the net? Score a dirty goal.
Okay, when Kyle Okposo's not playing the way Kyle Okposo's playing right now.
John Tavares is obviously the unquestioned leader of that line in terms of creativity.
Absolutely.
And stuff like that. Kyle Okposo is the guy who goes into the corners and gets the puck. Kyle Okposo wins, I'm going to say, and I don't, obviously this isn't scientific, 90% of the puck battles along the boards, Kyle Okposo is going to win.
They're both power forwards.
But Lee is the guy you plant in front of the goaltender. Lee is the guy who gets the tip-ins, the rebounds. Lee is the guy who screens the goalie on shots from the point. That's why I think that line works. It's you have something of everything at center, right wing, and left wing, offensively that you need. You have it all on that line.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'm not a huge fan of Okposo right now, though, so I wouldn't mind seeing Lee take that spot.
I said it. Kyle Okposo is having a rough time right now. He looks to me like he looks gassed, and all the work that he does on the wall, you could see it. The All-Star break is coming at a fantastic time for Kyle.
I saw you said that in the chat. I was going to bring that up.
Fantastic time for him.
I agree 100%. I think that this break could be huge for him. Just like I thought this break was going to be huge for another Islander, but then it turns out that it's not because he's going to be playing. As we found out today that Yaroslav Halak has been asked to play on the All-Star team in place of Jimmy Howard. Are we okay with this?
No, absolutely not. I think it is what it is, exactly, and you're not going to turn it down. Like, you don't turn down a Nobel Peace Prize. You don't turn down, you don't do that. You just go and you represent the sport and you do what you're told to do, and you play the game. But in all honesty, I think there's more prestige in winning a playoff series than starring in the All-Star game, and I'm pretty sure players, politically, they're politically correct. They're never going to say this, but they would rather win a playoff series. They would rather rest than have to participate in this dog and pony show, which is what this is. Well, the All-Star game should be. Look, I'm just going to say this, Shane.
It's a sponsorship event.
Exactly. For me, the only thing the NFL ever does right is the All-Star game. It's done after the season's over, right before. Isn't it right before, a week before the Super Bowl?
It's the week before the Super Bowl. It's the week before the conference finals, before the Super Bowl.
Exactly. So for me, that's how the All-Star game should be for the NHL. It should be after it's all said and done. For me, this is a dog and pony show that puts a lot of players at risk. But I understand. It's one thing to play in the Olympics. That I understand, and there you take the risks because it's something bigger than you. It's your country. It's something prestigious. That I understand. If you get injured there, one thing. You get injured at a freaking All-Star game.
Don't even go knock on every piece of wood that is.
I am knocking on it. Look, I'm knocking on it right now. So that's what I'm saying. Andy, you feel me on this. I know you do.
I do, Rich, but I definitely do, and I think your points are valid. But at the same time, it's pretty rare. I mean, I know that we're all crazed about what happened to DiPietro, and I'm kind of feeling a little bit of karma in terms of that as well. But honestly, it doesn't happen that often. How often do you see a guy like? I mean, DiPietro literally. We're not talking about get hurt. We're talking about ruined his whole career. I mean,
exactly.
Absolute. That doesn't. When's the last time you heard that happening, other than Rick? And that's just because at that time, everything that could have went wrong. Anything bad.
Murphy's Law should just be renamed Rick's Law.
Anything bad in the league that was like that the hockey gods were going to bestow on specific teams. It's kind of like he said, you know what? Let me just get this all in a bucket, and I'm just going to dump it on the Islanders' head. That's basically what happened at that time. So, you know, I would have liked to have seen Halak get the rest, but you know what? Let him go. Let him represent the team with JT, and let the Islanders get some positive press out of it. And that's that. Let him have a good time. He's not a starter, so he's only going to play one period, and he'll do some skills. And as long as he doesn't overextend himself, he'll be fine.
I have three things to say about the All-Star game. One,
There we go.
I'm glad Halak got the nod because I think he deserved it. He's playing phenomenal, so I'm happy about that. Two, I wish he would have been able to rest. Three, just eliminate the game. I'll watch 6 days in a row of the skills competition. I love the skills competition. I think it's the greatest thing of the NHL season besides when the Islanders win. I love the skills competition. I love the hardest shot. I love the accurate shot. I love the relay thing where you got to pass it over the stick and then into the little net and then like under the thing. I love it. Just eliminate the game. The game's pointless. Give me the skills competition. I don't need the game. I don't even watch the game. There's no defense. There's no hitting. It's not hockey.
Well, again, it's as Scott, as me and Scott were talking about this the other night, and he also said it's a sponsorship event. It's for the sponsors to get together, and it's for the NHL an opportunity for them to kind of kiss some butt and schmooze the sponsors for a day and let them get their time. And for the players, it's an opportunity for them to get together in the middle of the season and kind of chat with some friends. And we all know that hockey players are very friendly off the ice with each other.
But we could do that at the skills competition. There's literally no reason to play.
I said that to my son the other night. Have the skills competition. Forget the game. I totally agree with that. Instead of having a game, have a huge brunch. I mean, And by the way, Elwood just broke the chat with the comment. And it was so simple, and it's so simple. It's such a simple comment, but for some reason it just struck me as being the greatest thing I read all day. And that's Twitter is great. All it takes. That's all it takes sometimes. Keep it simple. Keep it simple.
All right, so it's getting late. We're running.
It's getting late. We gotta go to bed.
We're running just under an hour. Yo, I'm old.
Yo, you're old.
You're old. Look at this guy over here. You're old.
Real quick, let's do my favorite part of the Dump and Chase podcast. As a matter of fact, I like this part of the Dump and Chase podcast so much that I created a column on Islanders Insight just for this segment of the Dump and Chase podcast. And this is the Dump and Chase podcast, 3 stars of the past week. Anyone who read my column on Islanders Insight knows who my 3 are. So we're going to start here with star number 3 with Rich Diaz Rodriguez at RDNHL.
Letty, star number 3. Just because he's continuing to be great. Continually great. You want me to do all 3 now? Or are we doing it one at a time?
Yeah, do all 3, Rich. Give all 3.
All right, give all 3. So you got Letty. Who's number 2, Rich?
Anders Lee. And Ryan Strome is my number 1 again.
Okay, and so we got Letty, Lee, and Strome from Rich. Andy, who do you got?
I'll go with number 3. I'll go with head coach Jack Capuano. Number 2, I will go goaltender Yaroslav Halak. And number 1, center John Tavares.
All right, so Rich went with Letty, Lee, and Strome. Andy went with Capuano, Halak, and Tavares. So Andy, me and you, we're almost dead even. As a matter of fact, my number 3 was almost your number 3, but I changed my mind because of one play, and it was the big hit on Rick Nash that was gift all over the place and is fantastic. My number 3 is Johnny Boychuk, just because he's been an anchor back there on the blue line. He's been playing very well, and that hit solidified the pick for me on Rick Nash. Number 2, Yaroslav Halak, and number 1, John Tavares, because, in my opinion, a huge reason for this 3-game win streak is that overtime goal over the Devils that John Tavares scored, because I think Yep, he threw the team on his back, and he said, nope, this 2-game skid ends here. We're going to win this. And then the next thing you know, you beat Columbus by, by 3? You beat Columbus by 3, yeah. and you beat the Rangers by 3. Which, by the way,
that Devil game was very dangerous because the Islanders literally were sleeping for the first 2 periods.
They weren't the only ones.
I was dead. I was fast asleep. Scott, I was out like a light. Out like a light.
Those are the worst games ever.
The worst. Imagine a series. Holy mother of God.
Minute left in the third. Boston 3. New York Rangers nothing. I said this the other day that the New York Rangers had the number 1 PDO in the National Hockey League, which is an advanced stat that is largely looked upon as being luck-driven. and the Rangers were number 1 in the league in PDO. So I think we might be starting to see a little bit of that come back down to league averages, and especially over the last 2 games, which the Rangers have now been outscored 6-0.
By the way, did anyone? I'm sure everybody saw Tavares do the little yes, yes, yes chant after he scored, and then the whole team did it in their huddle after they beat the Devils. So it's good to see that they're feeding off of the crowd.
Yeah, it's catching on.
It's
catching on.
Scott's like, wouldn't it be funny if they were on the Yes, Yes, Yes network? All the Yes, Yes, Yes.
That would be kind of funny. But I think that just about wraps us up here on the Dump and Chase podcast, episode number 41 for January 15th, a Thursday night tonight. Usually we're on Wednesday nights, but I had to go out to Queens last night to coach high school hockey, so we had to do it tonight on Thursday. But next week we will be here on Wednesday night at approximately 8:30. Same spot, the dumpandchasepodcast.com/live. Make sure you guys jump in to the chat room. Thank you, Barry, Elwood, Peter, and Scott, and then of course I guess Andy, me, Rich, and Eric were all in the chat room too. So thank you guys for all participating with us. I like this new chat room edition. It's a lot easier to interact with everybody listening.
Absolutely.
So again, that's the
I had a lot of fun.
Podcast.
Thanks for the comments and the questions.
You killing my flow, Andy.
Sorry, buddy. I apologize. That's bad on me.
But before we get out of here, Andy Graziano at Tasman19, is there anything you'd like to plug?
You know, I keep saying it, but without the readers and the listeners, this really wouldn't be worth doing. So we thank all of you tremendously from the bottom of our hearts for all your support. Continue to listen, continue to read, continue to share us. That's the most important thing. And you know what? A huge shout out to my entire team at Islanders Insight. Everyone, Rich, Shane, the job you do with this podcast, Scott's edition, Eric's tremendous hard work, Chris, Pete, Reagan, Alex, just everyone down the line has just been so fantastic in what we've built here at Insight. I cannot thank you all enough.
All right, Rich Diaz Rodriguez at RDNHL. Is there anything you would like to plug?
I would just want to echo what Andy said. Well done, Andy. Well said. Just hope to see you guys next week, and let's go Islanders.
And I just want to say how much I love doing this show every week with Andy and Rich. It really is one of the highlights of my week. I love talking Islanders hockey, and I love doing it with you two guys. I'm going to run out of time here, so I got to be quick. Check out IslandersInsight.com. Check out the dumpandchasepodcast.com. Follow us all on Twitter. Come back next week, and until we're back, let's go Islanders.